and welcome everybody. Please go ahead and turn your cameras on and turn yourself on mute so that we can't hear you as we're going through the what? It's not a Zoom meet. It's not a Teams meeting either. It's a recorded session talk. It's recorded. Okay. Hi. Apparently this is recorded. Welcome to this amazing micro talk session about remote working and working from home. Obviously, in the last year, we have all learned these new skills about working from home, and these four speakers are going to talk about not just their personal experiences, but how they have transitioned their team to working from what? What's that? Hold on a second. Right. What was I saying? Sorry about that distraction. So obviously, during the last year, we've learned a lot about working remotely from home and transitioning our teams. Some of us have learned that we don't have to wear pants when only our top portion is shown. Did we know newscasters have been doing that for years. So thanks to them for setting that trend. We also learned we can attend Zoom meetings in bed. That's pretty cool. Don't have to really wake up and get go. What? Hold on. Why are you sitting in bed recording? Okay, good. They shouldn't interrupt us in here. As the year has gone on, we've not only learned about working ourselves from home, but also how to move our teams to working from home. Some of us have found office space in places that are clearly not offices. Some of us have found the joys of being able to work outside and move around, as well as the ability to not have to commute and having extra free time. But also we've dealt with a lot of problems. Obviously, there's the isolation and the potential breakdown of communication, as well as all of the trauma that people are experiencing during the pandemic. So these four leaders are going to talk about their experiences both personally and as a studio and how they moved through that. Now, all of us have been going through a lot, and during this conference, we may be all over the place, right? And what I really want everybody to do is really focus on this next session. So if you could shut down all of your other tabs, all of your communication programs, throw your phone in the ocean, toilet, whatever body of water is near you, and really prepare to focus for this next few minutes on this talk. So what I want to do before this is now normally if you've been to one of my talks, I have everybody stand up and scream and let all of their emotion out. Some of you may remember the GDC Microtalks session where the police ran in thinking that there was something going on, but thankfully there wasn't. But obviously, I don't want you to scream at home because I don't know what's going to happen when you do that. I don't know who's going to run in. So instead, we're going to have a moment of zen, a moment of quiet. So I'm going to put a nice image up on screen here. And what I want everybody to do is think about all the things happening at work, all the things happening in your life, and bring them right here to the center. Okay. And now, if you're willing and able, please participate with me. I'm going to lead us in a quick breathing exercise to push all that in. So when we breathe in, we'll think about those things. And when we breathe out, we'll push them out. And then we can focus on the session. All right. All right. Everybody breathe in. And breathe out. One more time, breathe in. And breathe out. Thank you so much for doing that with me. My name is Grant Schonkweiler. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to these amazing four speakers. I'm going to let them take it from here, and I can't wait to talk with everybody in the chat.
Welcome to Reconnected, inspiring your team in the age of Zoom. I run a team of 20 artists and designers, predominantly based in New York. We work on Two Dots, new games, and marketing campaigns, and we meet every week to say hello and share what we've been up to. In March 2020, we were told not to return to our beautiful, light-flooded office until further notice. At first, things were great. We were productivity ninjas. We got to skip our daily soul-sucking commute, and we were ready to get stuff done. It soon became clear, however, that a challenging aspect of remote working was the invisible pressure it put on everyone, especially those in the middle. What from afar looked like stable productivity turned out to be quite varied. Some team members struggled to structure their days without accountability of watchful peers and fell off a cliff productivity-wise. Others stopped setting boundaries at all and used work to fill most of their waking hours. Before going remote, a manager's job at the studio had consisted of directing and reviewing work, meeting with their team, and doing clerical tasks. For everything else, the daily workflow, the transmission of procedural and cultural information, and of course ideas, we had relied on osmosis and the shorthand of glances and small nudges. We had done so mostly unconsciously and without appreciating its easy efficiency. With the loss of physical proximity, the emotional and managerial labor to ensure the remote team's continued productivity fell squarely onto the shoulders of managers. In addition to our previous managerial tasks, my team leads and I spent unaccounted for hours creating documentation, structuring feedback, developing coaching plans, custom processes, and checking in on team members who are confused, lonely, disconnected, or unwell. We did so happily, of course, and it definitely improved morale, but it was exhausting. So if you manage managers, please don't take "I'm fine" as a sign that you don't need to tend to their needs, especially when working remotely. To mitigate the risk of burnout and instability, please notice if team members are frazzled, grumpy, or get sick a lot. Dig into their needs, give them a space to share their feelings, advocate for accommodations, and ensure their efforts are seen and understood by those in control. In our weekly team Zoom meetings, I requested people please keep their cameras on so we could see each other's faces. But as the months dragged on, this connection thing just got harder and harder. Folks seemed to grow increasingly passive, and many defaulted to no camera and stand-ups. And our team meeting, too, steadily diminished from a once vibrant full hour of excitedly shared projects and anecdotes to a speedy, uninspiring 20-minute blur of transactional headlines. This was not good. We would need to develop strategies to actively stave off this depletion. I prepared several lectures on topics I hoped would get the team excited. I wanted thought starters for the deep and complex stuff that makes a good artist and offer an antidote to the shallow waters of digital consumption. We looked at sacred geometry, theatrics, history, symbolism, and lateral thinking, that mindset of curiosity, of learning stuff, of always asking how things affect each other. The team were mildly interested, but I realized the topics were a little dense for a lighthearted rally. And for all the work that went into them, these presentations only added about 10 minutes to our still shrinking meetings. And then inspiration struck. In every Zoom meeting, clearly visible behind me, was a bookshelf with the art, design, and history books I collected over the years. What if I allowed my team to dive into these wonderful worlds? What if every week I shared a different artist, school, movement, history, or story with them? And all I had to do was pluck these wonderful things from the shelf. I named the segment Art Book Tuesdays to make it a thing, a ritual, something that had to happen every week, whether any one of us were in the mood or not. I hope this recurring act would give us an anchor in the vague, disorienting samey-same of Zoomland and offer something to look forward to every week. The art books definitely improved the energy level in our team meetings, but something was still missing. I decided to start adding a drawing prompt at the end of each meeting, a quick sketch inspired by the book they'd seen earlier, something to give us new inspiration and form and remind us why we had studied art in the first place. We would have whatever time remained of the meeting usually between 15 and 30 minutes, to draw the prompt and upload it to our team channel. And I always added my own sketch to signal it was safe to share and be vulnerable. While drawing, I let people turn off their cameras and mute themselves, but asked them to stay until the meeting ended. This way, we could each work individually, but still be together on Zoom. The first challenge was to design a game board inspired by groovy 1960s posters. I chose psychedelic art because I figured it was unlikely to be on anyone's mind, and I was blown away by the variety and ambition of what started popping up in channel minutes after the meeting ended. And the team also supported each other's work and commented and added emoji. Drawing can be terrifying, and this mutual encouragement made me very proud. The next week, we looked at skateboarding art and designed a custom skin for a product of our choice. Remember, all these mocks were created and uploaded within 1 hour of receiving the prompt. Next, we looked at medieval art, which relies on symbols and iconography. I asked the team members to create sigils for themselves. It was also a nice way to learn what everyone was thinking about, who was a coffee fiend, what pets they owned, and it being the pandemic, what foods they craved. They told us about their quarantine through data visualization. Here, someone's growing hair becomes a timeline of their pandemic milestones. There, a graph charts the ebb and flow of Nutella cravings. And on the bottom, we see the shrinking radius of someone's world. Each year, my artist friends and I have good intentions of making our own holiday cards. And each year we wait so long that by the time we're ready to sit down and create them, it's too late. So this past December, the Dots art team created their own holiday cards using Artbook Tuesday. And it's the only challenge where folks took a bit more time to polish their creations afterwards. This was our first challenge after returning from our holiday break. We illustrated our New Year's resolutions inspired by African flags. Then we imagined the insides of a pop culture character inspired by medical illustrations, and so on. Over the following months, people's confidence slowly returned, evidenced by the steadily growing number of uploads and comments in our channel. Artbook Tuesdays helped us to remember that we're artists because we enjoy making stuff and that we like and appreciate each other, even if we can only interact digitally at the moment. And thankfully, these days, about a quarter of Artbook Tuesdays are prepared by team members, which means I get to learn and be inspired along with the rest of the team. For those interested in trying your own Artbook Tuesday, I recommend creating challenges that are broad and open-ended, that feel casual, encourage play, emotionally connect to your everyday reality, and can be completed and shared in 20 to 30 minutes. We're still muddling through, but based on the past year, I'm confident we will greet whatever comes with compassion, grace, and lots of super weird drawings. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Bernstein, and I had a weird work from home experience. Literally the same day that the state of California, where I lived at the time, began issuing stay-at-home orders, I accepted the first full-time in-house job offer that I had had since the late 1900s. I had been a freelancer in games and television for over 20 years, which means that I had been working from home for more than 2 decades. So while the rest of the world was trying to adjust to working from home, I was trying to adjust to having a real job, which is why I have subtitled my microtalk, Tales from the Transition, the World Turned Right Side Up. But first, a few quick words about me. The full-time job that I currently hold is as a principal narrative designer for Deep Silver Volition, but in the past 20 years, I have designed games based on everything from Ben 10 to congressional redistricting. I've written games as diverse as Dead Space 2 and Pretty in Pink. I've worked for everyone from the National Counterterrorism Center to Walt Disney Imagineering, and I have worked in television, writing for hit shows such as Leverage and The Librarians. It has been an eclectic career involving work all over the world. And with the exception of a few extended business trips and a couple of months in the writer's room, I have performed it almost entirely from my own home. So, what worked well for me during work from home? Working from home. I've been doing it for 20 years. I've learned a few tricks. Now, some of these tricks probably would have been useful for people to have learned a year ago, but as the pandemic comes to an end, there are probably a lot of people considering remote work going forward. And so hopefully these tips will continue to be useful as things start to evolve towards the new normal. And my first and most important tip for working from home then is to maintain a work mentality, by which fundamentally I mean wear pants. I don't know when the ability to work without pants on became the American dream, but for 20 years, every time I tell someone that I work at home, their immediate response is, "Oh, you don't have to wear pants." And it's true, I don't, but I do every day. Because for me, the most important part of working from home is reminding yourself that you have a real job. You have to create a mindset of being in the office, even when you're at home, because otherwise you will drown in laundry or snacking or napping or dishes or any of the 1,000 little things that you can do at home that are not work. So you must convince your brain that you are not, in fact, at home. Dress like you're going to work. Groom like you're going to work. Maintain regular hours like you would at work. They don't need to be 9 to 5. They can be whatever works for you or for your company. But work on a regular schedule. Create a routine. Because as soon as your brain figures out that it can get away with this, it's going to nope out. It's hard. It is the hardest thing. After 20 years, I still find it hard. But maintaining the mentality that you are working is crucial. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is that the second most important thing about working from home is learning to switch off that work mentality. Work mentality is a double-edged sword. You need it to be able to work at home, but if you can't shut it off, you end up living at work. You have to create a separation between work and home. Now, one of the best ways that I've found to do this is to have a dedicated workspace that is your home office. Now, I know that this was hard, if not impossible, for a lot of people who were stuck in place during the pandemic. But if you're planning to be remote in the future, give this one a lot of thought. Because a dedicated workspace does two things. First, it helps to create your work mentality by giving you a place where you can go to shut the door, to shut out the world and just knuckle down and work. But it also gives you a place that you can leave at the end of the day. It may be a short commute, but it creates a clear delineation between work and home. Now, as I said, I know not everyone was lucky enough to have the space to create this delineation. What do you do if you don't? Well, you do whatever works. Dedicate some other space as your designated office. Separate off a part of the kitchen table. Maybe squeeze a desk into the bedroom. Maybe use one side of the sofa. But whatever that space is, use it for work and then don't use it the rest of the time. Create a separation. If you pick one side of the sofa, don't sit on that side of the sofa when you're not at work. If you're working from the bedroom, don't work from the bed. That's like sleeping at the office. If you're going to use the kitchen table, maybe clear it off at the end of the day to create a physical change in the space. If I had to set up a desk in my bedroom, I would put tape down around it to create some kind of psychological barrier that I could walk across at the end of each day. Now, another good trick to creating this separation is to change your clothes. This is another good reason to wear pants at work so you can take them off at the end of the day. Personally, I wear button-down shirts when I am working, and then I change out of them when I'm not. I have a friend who does the same thing with her shoes. It's another way of differentiating your life, of reminding yourself whether you are currently at work or at home. Now, what about people trying to separate work from home with kids? Well, I don't know what to say other than that you have my sympathies. I've been blessed enough that my wife can focus on taking care of our kids while I shut my office door. That makes it very easy for me. Now, I will offer, though, that a lot of what I'm saying here can also be helpful for your kids. Create a school mentality. Separate school from home. That can help regulate them, which in turn can help regulate you. Other than that, my only other advice to parents out there is to keep in mind the third most important thing I have learned about working from home, which is to cut yourself a break. Practice self-care. What you're doing is hard. Some days it will go well, other days it will not. That's okay. And it's okay to recognize it. Celebrate your successes. Take time to mourn your losses. I've had incredible highs and incredible lows over the last 20 years. When I have a big win, I celebrate. I buy myself dinner at my favorite restaurant, or I treat myself to a new Lego set to add to my trophy case. When I have a bad break, I give myself a day to wallow. I eat ice cream, I watch crappy TV, I play games, but just one day, mind you. That was always my rule. Lick your wounds, pull yourself together so that you can get back up onto your feet and go back to work tomorrow. Otherwise, you lose your work mentality and you end up here. Now, I should also note that self-care is something my studio has been really good at trying to help people out with. They have offered a ton of perks, including subscriptions to self-care apps like Headspace for meditation, Sworkit for workouts, Kindle Unlimited for general entertainment purposes, as well as general care packages and swag. If you are a company, I highly recommend that you can provide these things for your employees. If you're an employee and your company doesn't provide those things, I recommend that you check them out yourself. They've really been wonderful. So practicing self-care, that is the third most important part of working from home. Okay, that's what went well for me while working from home. I've been doing it a while. What was tough? Well, starting my first full-time job in 20 years. That was tough. And I want to be clear, what I'm about to talk about, I don't think any of it was the studio's fault. I was the first new hire during the work from home era. None of us really knew what to expect. And as I talk about what was tough, I'm also going to talk about what we did in order to try to alleviate it, which ultimately will form the takeaways for going forward. As more people start jobs remotely like I did, both employees and companies are going to need to learn to deal with that. So what was tough? Well, moving across the country during a global pandemic, very tough, do not recommend. There's no real takeaways to be had here other than don't move during a global pandemic. And if you're planning on working remotely in the future, you've already decided not to move at all. So there's not a lot else to say here, but I'm supposed to talk about what was tough, and this was tough. Okay, what else was tough? Well, lack of casual conversation with my coworkers. When you work from home, you don't get water cooler time. You don't get lunchtime chit chat. You don't get those spontaneous pickup conversations that you overhear happening in the hallway and wander over to join in on. The only conversations that you have are calls that somebody initiated for a specific reason. But these kinds of casual conversations, that's how you build real relationships with your colleagues. At a studio our size, after a year, I should know everyone by face, if not by name. I don't, not even close, because I don't get to wander the halls and see them. And this isn't just a social issue. This is a productivity issue too. As a new hire learning the ropes, when I had a question about something basic, I couldn't just casually look up and ask a colleague. No, I had to send them a message and see if they're free to chat, and then wait for them to start a call, and then share my screen. And then the whole thing just became that much harder. So what did the studio do to alleviate these difficulties? Well, first, they assigned me a buddy. This was a designated person to bother when I had questions. Now, I think the buddy system was standard practice at the studio even in the before times, but during work from home, it was even more valuable because I had a lot of questions because I couldn't just learn by osmosis. And since my buddy was conscientious enough to usually tack a, hey, how you doing on after I had finished asking my questions, the conversations that started with a specific purpose in mind often evolved into water cooler conversations, which was a great starting point for building a connection. Now, the other thing that the studio did to help foment casual connections was to invite me to every department's stand-up meeting for the first couple of weeks. And this was the virtual equivalent of taking me around the office in order to meet everyone. Now, to be honest, this was kind of a blur of faces without context that only scratched the surface in terms of me getting to know everyone else at the office. But it was really useful for getting the rest of the office to get to know me. So that's a technique that I highly recommend when starting remote hires. And then the third most difficult thing that I had to face, which is deeply intertwined with this, and it's a bit tricky, so I hate to even bring it up, but was people not using their cameras. Now, I know you don't always want everyone to use their cameras, especially in a big meeting. And I know that even in small meetings, people often have very good reasons not to use their cameras, low bandwidth, shared space, or other private, personal reasons. But it makes a huge difference, particularly with someone new coming into the company. It is so hard to build a relationship with this because you lose all the social cues that tell you how you're getting along. There have been times when I can't tell if I'm having a civil, legitimate, creative disagreement with someone, or if we're having a worrisome interpersonal conflict, or if they just have an offbeat sense of humor that I just don't quite understand yet. And that's really hard. When you've been on the inside for a while, it's easy to forget how difficult it is for new hires coming in. You only have one new person to meet. I have several hundred. And when they're coming in remotely, when I can't meet those people casually, I can only connect with them on a call. So when you're dealing with someone new, even if you don't like to do it, please consider using your camera for their sake. So that is what went well. That is what was tough. And that is my tale from the transition.
Hello, my name is Charu. I'm production director at Interior Night, and I'm going to share some information on our studio transition plan. First of all, a really quick intro. So I've been making games for 20 years now. First started as an engineer at Sony's PlayStation studio in London. Then I joined Microsoft Xbox. And for the last 3 years, I've been with Interior Night, an indie studio in London. We're working on our debut game called As Dusk Falls. I'm going to be talking today about the transition to come rather than the one that was. This is the single biggest decision we're making in the studio at the moment, and Interior Night has evolved a lot over the last 18 months. So we're still working out all of the details, but I'm going to talk about our options, the factors we've considered, and the subsequent planning. Pre-pandemic, happy days. 18 months ago, the studio looked like this. 30 people squeezed into a small space in London. We thrived in crowded places. Fast forward to July 2021, and we're still a diverse team, very talented, 50% female, very international. Half of the people come from outside of the UK, but now studio meetings look very different. Also, the team has expanded a lot. We've gone from 30 people in January 2020 to 45 people in July 2021. In terms of growth, that's a massive 50%. Crucially, something that I didn't consider at all was the geographical change that might happen across the team. So with our team being so international, some people naturally wanted to move back home, and new people effectively joined a remote studio. You can see the difference with the yellow pins on the graphs, on the maps. The result is that we went from being 90% based in London to scattered across the UK, with 7 now based in Europe. So the decision of which studio model you choose is a long-term one, and it could end up redefining your team culture and operations. Tech and game studios are opting for different solutions. Some are being really brave and committing to remote forever, like Twitter and Facebook. Being entirely studio-based feels like a very traditional approach at the moment, while becoming hybrid, which aims to deliver the best of both worlds, is really popular with employers and employees. Xbox seem to be leaning towards this hybrid model. Numbers vary, but there have been lots of surveys, and this year one of them found that 73% of people really value the flexibility that they've been enjoying over the last couple of years. And approximately 60% would even consider resigning if there was zero scope for work from home. So aside from studio culture, there are lots of very tricky external factors to consider, some of these operating on a national level. So for example, the question of when is a good time to transition isn't obvious. In the UK, we're unexpectedly entering a 4th wave of rising cases. The other factors, such as team geography and logistics of tech setup, are more known problems. But I think the most significant problem really is that the talent landscape has shifted fundamentally. The recent boom in video games industry and people playing means that there are more jobs than ever before, at the same time as people reconsidering their family life balance. Consequently, retention is even harder, and 40% of people are now considering a move now that they feel secure. Digital exhaustion is real. There is evidence that all of the high productivity has come at a hidden human cost. The increase in communications, the frequent meetings, some people are finding this really exhausting, and many people are feeling overworked. Other research that I've done has shown that demographics aren't being affected in the same way. Gen Z, the 18 to 25-year-olds, report suffering more than most, saying that it has affected their opportunities to network and their enthusiasm. This is especially applicable to the games industry because we skew younger. So back to Interior Night. our current ideal is to transition away from Zoom and to be together again. This is mainly because of the social aspects of work that were so integral to our studio culture. The eating lunch together, the ad hoc coffees, the natural fluid interactions that used to happen outside of scheduled meetings. On a personal level, I've really missed the conversations with colleagues that I don't work with on a daily basis. So we're really leaning into the hybrid, but being studio first. So that means that there'll be an expectation that most people will work full-time on site. But at the same time, we're going to actively promote camaraderie and a sense of belonging for those who are remote. We have a lot of young people on the team, so ultimately this feels like it's going to be the most beneficial. It was really interesting to see that even at the height of the pandemic, when the rules were at their strictest, 15% of the team requested to still work in the studio. They had a lot of different reasons for this. For some people, it was more to do with their mental health. For other people, they had limited living space, which meant they were working in their bedrooms and as well as sleeping there. And feelings of isolation were common. Working from home can also lead to working longer hours. That's definitely true for me. Over time, our game development has really become more siloed. Reviewing the game together as a team is fun, but also very key to our development process, and that has become a lot harder to coordinate now. So the studio first but flexible plan still has some details that need to be finalized, but the goal really is to transition over the next 6 months. In practice, this means a few different things. So being full-time in the studio is going to become the default. People who have moved away from London can decide to stay remote. And splitting your time between the studio and work from home is a definite possibility, but will be agreed to on a case-by-case basis. So for us, the hybrid seems like a natural evolution. In reality, it's also the hardest to get right because you have to work harder to maintain a one-team mentality. Working from home so far has been surprisingly successful for us, so we're committed to putting the effort in to make it work for everyone. Thank you for listening. Feel free to send through any questions or comments, and I've added a list of references for the data that I drew from.